Big thanks to Kakao Games for sponsoring today's video and for providing me with a key for their hit MMO, Black Desert Online. Black Desert Online is a huge Korean open world MMO with breathtaking visuals and fast action-based combat. The game contains 16 unique classes, each with distinctive appearances and abilities, and soon there will also be a brand new Archer class. The character creation feature is also definitely one of the best and most detailed on the market. The game is packed full of content and is constantly being updated with new things to do. In fact, the game is now gearing up for its long-awaited expansion pack launching November 14th, which will add new areas, over 300 quests, a huge menacing dragon boss, and much more. See for yourself and get a 7-day free trial by checking out the link in the description. The Mother series, or EarthBound as it's known outside of Japan, has had a checkered past with localization. The first game in the series, Mother on the Japanese Famicom, was originally planned to be released overseas as EarthBound, notably with a space splitting the words Earth and Bound compared to how the series is known today. In fact, Nintendo of America's localization team had already finished an extensive localization of the game, complete with typical changes of the time, such as religious symbols being removed from churches, smoking references being removed, and violent imagery being toned down. This version of the game was complete and ready to release by September of 1990. Furthermore, the localization team finalized an 80-page instruction manual, which included a small walkthrough to help players get started, alongside 2 posters with a map and enemy chart printed on their flip sides. There were even talks of an official soundtrack release. Nevertheless, Nintendo of America put the project on halt, deciding not to release the game till the following year in hopes of building up a better marketing campaign to accompany its release. This ended up spelling the game's doom, however, as by 1991 the Super NES's North American release was fast approaching. Phil Sanhop, a product analyst specialist at Nintendo of America during the game's localization, explained in an interview, essentially the game was already a wrap and was in line for production when the details of the Super NES's launch started to firm up. EarthBound on the NES was not cancelled, it was just not produced. Think of a movie that has been edited and need only to be copied and sent to the theatres, along with a marketing program. Sometimes these things sit for years before the studio feels it's right. Nintendo had that luxury with games, especially NES games. Once the Super NES squatted in the pipeline and shoved the game aside from its appointed time, I believe that the marketing execs just decided that the game would be too expensive to produce and unsuccessful without marketing, and that's why it fell into oblivion. However, all was not lost, as a few years later Mother 2 was announced for the Super Famicom and Nintendo of America worked doubly as hard to bring EarthBound, now just one word, to Western shores with one of the most comprehensive localizations of video game history. To do this, Nintendo of America paired Marcus Lindblom with Japanese writer Masayuki Miura to rewrite nearly all of the text within the game. Miura was invaluable for helping Lindblom understand the tone and context of the original Japanese version's often bizarre text. Lindblom would then rework everything to better ring with Western audiences. Some changes were fairly minor, such as Mother 2's opening screen, which was changed to avoid any potential confusion since Mother 1 was never released in North America. Other aspects had to be completely reworked, such as the Japanese Kokeshi doll statue found in Mother 2. Kokeshi dolls were first made in northeastern Japan around the late Edo period and sold as souvenirs to travelers visiting the region's hot springs. They were treasured as good luck charms or children's toys and can still be found today throughout the country. Furthermore, in Japanese, the word for erase is keshi, so in a clever bit of wordplay, players use a kokeshi keshi to erase the statue in the game. While kokeshi dolls would already be very foreign to most Western gamers, the pun makes absolutely no sense in English. Thus, the localization team replaced the kokeshi statue entirely with a statue of a giant pencil eraser and tasked players with using an eraser instead. Lindblom recalls, so when I was trying to figure out how to handle that, the guy from Japan was like, I have no idea what you want to do here. You can make it weird if you want. Then I said, well, there needs to be something that's an eraser. Okay, let's just call it the eraser, which ended up playing off the Kokeshi idea. It worked out, but that was one of those cases where I had to come up with something odd that didn't really have all that much to do with the original Japanese version of the game. However, while a number of these changes were made to better suit Western audiences, others were made at the behest of Nintendo of America's strict censorship policies of the time. For example, the bar in Fourside was turned into a cafe. In fact, every single reference to alcohol in the game was changed to coffee instead. In Mother 2, a man in the bar says, I was drunk, so I accidentally knocked on the wall instead of the bathroom door. Whereas the same man in EarthBound's cafe says, I was in the middle of a caffeine buzz and I had to get to the bathroom bathroom fast. When I got there, I accidentally knocked on the wall instead of the restroom door. Additionally, a health recovery item called a grown-up drink in Mother 2 was sanitized to be a protein drink in EarthBound. Violence was also toned down. For instance, when Nez brings Picky and Pokey back home to his parents in Mother 2, you can hear their fathers beating them off screen. Meanwhile, in EarthBound, the sound effects changed altogether. Any instances of nudity was removed too, such as when Nez visits Magicant. He was originally naked in Mother 2, but wears pajamas in EarthBound. Lindblom lamented this change in particular, stating, "If I had my choice, I would have left Nez naked in Magicant because I thought that was kind of awesome." Numerous religious references were edited out of the game too. A number can be found in the Happy Happy Village, where many of the NPCs originally referred to gods, goddesses, and even the devil in Mother 2, whereas EarthBound's localization team were forced to write around this as best as they could. For example, this hippie says we might have been listening to messages from the devil rather than God in the Japanese release, but this was changed to we might have been listening to evil messages rather than good in the West. Speaking of the Happy Happy Village, another localizer explained the change behind the cultist of Happy Happyism's outfits between the Japanese and North American releases, claiming also while not strictly religious, we did change the Happy Happiest hats a bit. Miura-san knew that there was a chance that the appearance of men with hoods over their heads would be too close to the Ku Klux Klan, and he was right. So the first change they suggested was a puffball at the end of the cap, like a Santa hat. I was fine with that, but I did also ask that they take the HH off the cap. I thought that the blocky low-res H looked a bit like a K at the small size, and so just to be on the safe side, I asked them to remove that. Nevertheless, Lindblom says the team didn't remove every single religious reference, saying in an interview, Nintendo of America wanted as few religious references as possible, no matter how seemingly innocuous. Although we did leave the word pray in the game just because we thought that was kind of nice and general enough that it didn't necessarily feel, to me at least, that I had to take that word out. Because honestly, I really didn't want to put the word wish in or something like that, because that just sounded lame to me. A few fans have also pointed to the removal of red crosses from hospitals and the nurses' outfits in EarthBound as yet another example of religious censorship too. However, Lindblom claims that this wasn't done for religious reasons as much as it was done to avoid copyright issues, saying, "We had to take out the red crosses on the hospitals because we knew that was sort of questionable even at the time. They could come and say, you know, because there's the actual organization, the Red Cross, who uses that as their symbol." This would be far from the early alteration due to copyright concerns either. In Mother 2, a truck obviously referencing Coca-Cola was changed entirely in EarthBound. Comparably, Mother 2's Tonzara brothers originally wore matching black suits and hats, clearly referencing the Blues Brothers, one of the series creators' many inspirations for the game. This was made less clear in EarthBound, where the band was named the Runaway Five despite actually having 6 members and given different coloured outfits. Nonetheless, we've just scratched the surface of the differences between the games, as the amount of changes Nintendo of America's localization team made was unusually large. In fact, professional video game translator Clyde Mandolin has even written an entire book comparing Mother 2 and EarthBound called Legends of Localization Book 2 EarthBound. However, despite all of the efforts Nintendo of America put in, the game was classed as a commercial failure upon release. This came as a big blow to Nintendo, who spent around $2 million to advertise the game in North America. Shigeru Miyamoto said, "We had high hopes for EarthBound, the Super NES version, in the US, but it didn't do well. We even did a TV commercial thinking, hey, this thing could sell 3 million copies, but it didn't." Some have blamed the game's infamous marketing campaign, known for lines such as "this game stinks," as well as gross scratch and sniff cards for its failure, and claiming that these advertisements completely missed EarthBound's unique tone and charm, and ultimately drove away potential fans from giving the game a shot. Lindblom offered his own theories behind the game's failure, saying, "The sales were definitely disappointing, but I wasn't really surprised for a couple of reasons. The first thing was the price of the game. By including the strategy guide in the box, which I felt was a great guide and one I'm very happy with, the cost of the game needed to be higher. For a game that hadn't established an audience, it was an expensive proposition for a lot of gamers." The second issue, which became apparent when the reviews started to come in, was the graphics. In those days of the Super NES, NES and the Sega Genesis, sophisticated graphics were becoming a key feature, as Sega emphasized the speed of the Sonic the Hedgehog games, and Nintendo followed with Mode 7 graphics and the Super FX chip, used in games like Star Fox to render 3D visuals. To many of the reviewers at the time, EarthBound's graphics looked like enhanced 8-bit graphics and felt a bit too much like a throwback that the market wasn't looking for yet. Ironically, the aesthetics seem to play very well today in this age of retro gaming. The cuteness, colours and hallucinatory bits are called out as favourites by a lot of fans these days, but back at the time of release in 1995, this certainly wasn't the case. Whatever the reason may have been, Lindblom confessed, nothing could change the fact that the game was viewed as a miss within the company. In fact, this miss has commonly been rumoured to be the reason why Mother 3 has never been released outside of Japan despite fan outcry. On the bright side though, things have been looking up for EarthBound fans in more recent years. EarthBound was re-released on the Wii U's Virtual Console in North America and Europe on July 18th, 2013, marking the first time the game has ever been officially available in Europe at all. EarthBound would also later be included on North American and European versions of the Super NES Classic Edition, despite not being on Japan's Nintendo Classic Mini Super Famicom. Even more surprisingly, the English version of Mother 1 was finally released nearly 25 years after being completed via the Wii U's Virtual Console on June 14th, 2015 in North America and Europe, where it was retitled EarthBound Beginnings. Again, I'd like to thank Cacao Games and Black Desert Online for sponsoring today's video. Black Desert Online has been successfully launched in over 150 countries and is available in 12 languages and has over 9.5 million registered users. If you want to check it out for yourself, including the brand new expansion launching November 14th, please see the link in the description where you'll be able to get a 7-day free trial, and please consider subscribing to the channel to see more videos on how video games and other media are changed around the world. Until next time, thank you for watching.